In the past, every time this number fell below 60, the United States entered in a recession within 12 months. Every single time. Here's how to prepare for what's coming.
By the time Washington makes it official, the damage is already done, jobs are gone, savings are down. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how this pattern works, and more importantly, what the families who came through the last two recessions without losing everything actually did differently. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index just hit 53.3, first percentile of all recorded history, below where it's still at the start of every recession it has ever measured. The government says GDP is positive, labor market intact, no recession. The index says otherwise. January 1980, consumer sentiment falls below 60 and the recession begins the same month. The index did not follow the announcement. The announcement followed the index. 2007, the index falls below 60 in November. The Federal Reserve tells Congress that month it sees no significant spillovers from the subprime market. 1 month later, the recession is officially declared. 18 months of contraction follow, 8.7 million jobs lost. The Fed was wrong. The index was right a month before the Fed admitted there was even a problem. 2022, the index hits 50. The administration refuses to use the word recession. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth are recorded anyway. The label did not change what happened to the family whose hours were cut. 6 recessions, 6 signals before the declaration arrived. This is not coincidence. It is a mechanism. Consumer spending drives approximately 70% of the U.S. economy. When confidence collapses, spending follows before any quarterly GDP number can capture it. The index measures the turn before the data confirms it. That is why it leaves. That is why it is always left. The sequence runs the same way every time. People feel worse about the future. They cut discretionary spending first. Dining, travel, new clothes. The restaurant owner feels it 6 weeks before any government agency measures it. Businesses see revenue fall before they cut jobs. They cut hours first. The paycheck shrinks. The worker spends less. The cycle requires no additional trigger. It feeds itself from the inside out. Right now, the consumer expectations sub-index, the forward-looking component, just fell 8.7% in a single month. That is not a fluctuation. That is acceleration in the wrong direction. At the same time, year-ahead inflation expectations jumped from 3.4 to 3.8%. Rising price fears and collapsing economic confidence arriving together. The Federal Reserve cannot cut rates without reigniting inflation. It cannot hold rates without deepening the slowdown. There is no clean exit from that position. The Conference Board tracks a separate measure. Its expectations index has been below the recession warning threshold for 13 consecutive months, the longest sustained breach of that level since the 2008 financial crisis. 13 months of warning before a single declaration. February payrolls came in at negative 92,000. Economists had forecast a gain of 59,000. The labor market, that was the last credible argument against recession, just delivered its worst reading in years. Retail sales fell in January, flat in February. The 70% engine has stalled. Some households are now using buy now, pay later for groceries, not appliances, not electronics, groceries. That is not a spending preference, that is exhaustion. Serious mortgage delinquencies at 90+ days climbing year over year. Auto loan delinquencies at the highest level since 2010. Credit card delinquencies matching 2008 levels. 3 separate measures of household stress moving in the same direction simultaneously. JP Morgan raised its recession probability to 35%. Moody's Analytics put it at 49. These are the institutions that reprice capital when they move their models. They are watching the same data. The top 10% of earners now account for 49.2% of all U.S. consumer spending, up from 35% in the early 90s. The entire economy balances on a single demographic. That demographic holds the majority of its wealth and equities. The S&P fell 7.3% in the final weeks of March. When equity wealth falls, that demographic pulls back, and their pullback shows up in restaurant reservations and discretionary travel before it shows up in any unemployment number. The NFIB Small Business Index has fallen 3 consecutive months. Uncertainty is now the top concern among small business owners, above taxes, above labor costs. Uncertain owners stop hiring. They cut inventory. They freeze credit extensions. The economic velocity drops before any official contraction is declared. Here is the gap no one in Washington is addressing directly. 13 consecutive months below recession signal territory. Delinquencies rising across mortgages, auto loans, and credit cards simultaneously. Payrolls made it of retail flat, expectations accelerating downward. The official position maintains that GDP is positive and the labor market is intact. Both are technically true. Neither has ever been the indicator that called the turn first. 1 in 4 consumers reported feeling worse off than the prior month as of late March, while aggregate spending data still showed technically positive numbers. That gap does not resolve by sentiment improving. It resolves when the headline catches up to where sentiment already was.
Hey, real quick, sorry to cut in. If a recession window is actually opening, do not wait until the headlines confirm it. The real estate crash course bundles that I put together walks you through the cycle of real estate, what pressure usually shows up first, and how to get through the next stage before the damage is done and how you could take advantage of it. I'm going to throw the link down below. And now let's get back to the video.
When confidence collapses at this scale, real estate does not wait for an official declaration. It responds to the same inputs the index measures: falling confidence, tightening credit. The spread between what sellers expect and what buyers can qualify for widens before any economist calls it. Foreclosure filings have increased 12 consecutive months. Completed repossessions up 35% year over year. FHA delinquencies, the most financially exposed borrowers, above 11%. The pressure is concentrated exactly where it always concentrates first: the households with the least buffer, the markets where affordability already collapsed. Now here is what actually matters. Here is what the families who came through 2008 without losing the house knew that most households did not. They did not have advance warning of the exact date. They had the same signals visible right now, and they moved before the majority recognized what was happening. The families who came through 2009 intact were not the wealthiest households. They were the most liquid ones. Not equity, not real estate, not crypto, cash. Liquidity is the single most powerful asset in a repricing cycle. It lets you absorb a job disruption without a forced sale. It lets you refinance when rates drop. It lets you buy when the majority is trying to hold on. The families who lost the most in 2008 were not the poorest. They were the most leveraged at the worst moment. High mortgage relative to value, high consumer debt, low reserves. The cycle did not target them for being poor. It targeted them for being exposed when the repricing came. The institutional capital that bought tens of thousands of foreclosed homes at the bottom in 2012 did not arrive in 2012 with a plan. The plan was built in 2010 and 2011 when the leading indicators looked exactly like this. They moved into liquidity and preparation. When the cycle completed, they deployed. They were buyers when the rest of the market was absorbing losses. The individual household can execute the same structural logic at its own scale. Understand the cycle. Build liquidity. Reduce exposed leverage. Position to act when the majority is reacting. That combination has worked across every recession cycle in modern American history because it is not a prediction strategy. It is a positioning strategy. It does not require knowing the exact date. It requires knowing the direction. The direction right now is not ambiguous. Sentiment is at its lowest measured position relative to recession history. Delinquencies are rising. Expectations are falling. The labor market is cracking at the edges. Every historical parallel from 1980 through 2022 points to the same next chapter. The question is not whether that chapter arrives. The question is what side of it you are on. Historically, the deepest discounts in real estate follow 18 to 24 months after sentiment hits these levels. The families with liquidity going into the cycle were the ones with options coming out. Options are not luck. They are the result of understanding where in the cycle you are before the majority of the market recognizes it. The cycle does not punish people who see it coming. It punishes people who see it coming and do nothing with the time mea. The families who understood what November 2007 was measuring made different choices in November than the families who waited for December. Not because they were smarter, because they were earlier. That month was the entire difference. The next reading is coming. One of two things happens. It stabilizes, and the 48-year record gets its first exception in history. Or it falls further, and the conversation Washington has been avoiding starts whether they want it to or not. Either way, the families who understood this cycle before that reading landed made a different choice than the families still waiting to see how it comes out. The index has never been wrong about the direction. It is pointing in one direction right now. The families who move with it before the majority sees it are the ones who come out the other side ahead of where they went in.